Hello and welcome to this next Flip Preaching video. I hope that you're well wherever you are. This week, this is the Sunday after Christmas, and so we get a story about what happens to the baby Jesus after he's born. So our passage today is Luke 2:22 to 40. And we get the story of what happens when Mary and Joseph took the infant Jesus to the temple. It's really clear through this passage that the family were very devout Jews. They wanted to do everything right. So they went to the temple. So it starts off by saying when the time came for their purification, and we think that's talking about Mary. There were various rules at the time that sought to remedy the fact that they thought that when a woman gave birth, she was made ritually impure. Today we would probably disagree with that, but at the time in their faith, this was their tradition, and Mary went through with it. So she went to the temple to present herself for some ritual of purification and to present Jesus, which you did with the firstborn male in your family. Interestingly, it says that they offered a sacrifice, which it says what stated in the law of the Lord, a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. Now this is quite interesting. On 2 counts, it's not earth-shatteringly interesting, but one is that this was a sin offering. There's a sense that the baby is brought into the world sinful, and you need to make an offering to get rid of their original sin. There's a kind of hint of the original sin doctrine here. I'm not sure whether Jesus needed that to take place, but he went, though they did it anyway. The other thing is that this was the cheaper sacrifice. There were different sacrifices which you would offer depending on how wealthy your family was, and this is kind of the bargain one, which shows that Mary and Joseph were quite a poor family. There were more expensive options for the wealthier people, so they were not a wealthy couple, according to this little bit of information. So they're in the temple in Jerusalem, and throughout this, actually, the temple is presented in quite a positive way, and we meet these 2 people who they're met in the temple, and they're both brilliant examples of faithful, God-centered people. There's Simeon, and then later there's Anna. In Luke's Gospel, he's very conscious to present men and women as equal. Whenever there's a man, well, quite often when there's a story about a man in Luke's Gospel, he'll balance it with a story of a woman, and this is an example of that kind of balancing. He was a man ahead of his time as Luke. So Simeon, it said he was an old man. They're both old people. Simeon was awaiting let me find it. I've lost where we are now. Simeon was looking forward to the consolation of Israel. The consolation of Israel. What we think that means is in the book of Isaiah. Let me look up the reference. I think it's Isaiah 40. Isaiah 40. There's the passage which is read a lot during the Advent season, which begins with "Comfort, oh comfort my people," and this has become known as the Book of Consolation. Within the whole book of Isaiah, there are different sections. So this is called the Book of Consolation. So Simeon was waiting for the time when Israel would be comforted, when Israel would be held and restored. Later, it says that Anna she's praising God and spoke to all of those, and we get the sense that she's a part of this, anticipating the redemption of Israel. And then Isaiah 52, chapter 9, he said, "Listen, your sentinels lift up their voices, together they sing for joy." So Anna and Simeon are kind of these sentinels lifting up their voices, for in plain sight they see the return of the Lord to Zion. Break forth together into singing, you ruins of Jerusalem. for the Lord has comforted his people. He has redeemed Jerusalem. So these two phrases, the consolation, the comfort, and the redemption, both of them realise that Jesus is the one who will do this. Simeon then gives these beautiful words of hope to Mary and Joseph. Interestingly, in verse 32, he says that Jesus will be a light for revelation to the Gentiles and a glory for your people Israel. This is the first time we get a sense that Jesus is not just a Jewish Messiah. Jesus is the Saviour of the world. The first time that the Gentiles are mentioned within that here, within Luke. After all of that, Simeon's words take a slightly darker turn. It says, "This child is destined for the falling and rising of many in Israel." And we think that this is perhaps referring back to the words of Micah, the ancient prophet Micah, Micah 7:7-8. "But as for me, I will look to the Lord. I will wait for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me. Do not rejoice over me, O my enemy. When I fall, I shall rise. When I sit in darkness, the Lord will be a light to me." So I think he's echoing those words that when we're in a tricky state, when we've fallen, we will rise. There's a sense that Jesus is going to rise up those who have fallen. He will be a sign that will be opposed. And this is Luke's way of describing the crucifixion. So in the crucifixion, there's a sense of opposition and hatred, and Jesus is going to be rejected by the world. There's going to be a fall at that time, but there will be a rising, a resurrection. And then I think this is fascinating. So verse 35, "So that the inner thoughts of many will be revealed, and a sword will pierce your own soul too." In this English translation, those two clauses have been flipped round. Actually, the thing about the sword being pierced comes before the bit about many hearts will the inner thoughts of many hearts will be revealed. This is important because we don't really know who this is referring to. There's a sense in which he was talking to Mary. So a sword will pierce your soul too. And that's been interpreted as a heads up that this is going to be a rocky road for Mary, and of course she'll see her son crucified. But perhaps it goes broader than that. The sword will pierce everybody. The sword kind of represents judgment and separating good from bad. In Ezekiel 14:17, the same sword is used to describe God coming and cutting away animals from men, and that in a beast kind of way, in an evil sense. There's a sense that God needs to sort out this world, and it will involve some surgery, some cutting away. So a few things to think about then. So what was the meaning of this offering of the pigeons or turtle doves? Secondly, what were Simeon and Anna awaiting? Just an aside, I think this is a really interesting thing. It makes quite clear that both Simeon and Anna were elderly, and yet they were forward-looking. They didn't look back into a self-satisfied life. They looked forwards into God doing something better. And 3, what do you make of this image of the sword and the opposition? And finally, as always, how is this good news for you and me today? Okay, well, thanks for watching. I'd love to hear what you think about these questions or anything else that strikes you from this passage. There's loads more in this. Okay, we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.